Sometime in the autumn of 1942, Soviet soldiers advanced through the rubble of Stalingrad. The battles on the Eastern Front constituted the largest military confrontation in history. The commander of a Cossack unit on active service in the Kharkov region, Ukraine, on June 21, 1942, watching the progress of his troops. They were characterized by unprecedented ferocity, wholesale destruction, mass deportations, and immense loss of life due to combat, starvation, exposure, disease, and massacres. The crew of a German anti-tank gun, ready for action at the Russian front in late 1942. The Eastern Front, as the site of nearly all extermination camps, death marches, ghettos, and the majority of pogroms, was central to the Holocaust. This photo, taken in the winter months of 1942, shows citizens of Leningrad as they dip for water from a broken main during the nearly 900-day siege of the Russian city by German invaders. Unable to capture the Leningrad, today known as St. Petersburg, the Germans cut it off from the world, disrupting utilities and shelling the city heavily for more than 2 years. Over the course of 4 years, more than 400 Red Army and German divisions clashed in a series of operations along a front that extended more than 1,000 miles. A farewell in Leningrad, in the spring of 1942. The German siege of Leningrad caused widespread starvation among citizens, and lack of medical supplies and facilities made illnesses and injuries far more deadly. Some 1.5 million soldiers and civilians died in Leningrad during the siege. Nearly the same number were evacuated, and many of them did not survive the trip due to starvation, illness, or bombing. Some 27 million Soviet soldiers and civilians and nearly 4 million German troops lost their lives along the Eastern Front during those years of brutality. Evidence of the bitter street fighting which took place during the occupation of Rostov, Russia by German forces in August of 1942. To make things even more complex, forces within the Soviet Union were often fractured among themselves. Early in the war, some groups had even welcomed the Germans and fought against the Red Army in the hopes that Hitler's troops would liberate them from Stalin. A German motorized artillery column crossing the Don River by means of a pontoon bridge on July 31, 1942. Wrecked equipment and material of all kinds lies strewn around as the crossing is made. Later, as battles became desperate, Stalin issued Order No. A Russian woman watches building burn sometime in 1942. 227. Not a step back, which forbids Soviet forces from retreating without direct orders. An execution of Jews in Kiev, carried out by German soldiers near Ivangorod, Ukraine, sometime in 1942. This photo was mailed from the Eastern Front to Germany and intercepted at a Warsaw post office by a member of the Polish resistance collecting documentation on Nazi war crimes. The original print was owned by Tadeusz Mazur and Jerzy Tomaszewski and now resides in historical archives in Warsaw. The original German inscription on the back of the photograph reads, Ukraine 1942, Jewish Action Operation, Ivangorod. More info about this picture. Commanders who sought to pull back faced tribunals, and foot soldiers faced blocking detachments of their own fellow soldiers, ready to gun down any who fled. A German soldier with a machine gun during the Battle of Stalingrad in spring of 1942. The Eastern Front was decisive in determining the outcome of the European portion of World War II, eventually serving as the main reason for the defeat of Nazi Germany. German soldiers crossing a Russian river on their tank on August 3, 1942. The crew of a German anti-tank gun, ready for action at the Russian front in late 1942. This picture, received by the Associated Press on September 25, 1942 through a neutral source, shows a bomb falling after it has just left the plane on its descent to Stalingrad below. An execution of Jews in Kiev, carried out by German soldiers near Ivangorod, Ukraine, sometime in 1942. 3 Russian war orphans stand amid the remains of what was once their home in late 1942. After German forces destroyed the family's house, they took the parents as prisoners, leaving the children abandoned. This photo was mailed from the Eastern Front to Germany and intercepted at a Warsaw post office by a member of the Polish resistance collecting documentation on Nazi war crimes. A German armored car amidst the debris of the Soviet fortress Sevastopol in Ukraine on August 4, 1942. The original print was owned by Tadeusz Mazur and Jerzy Tomaszewski and now resides in historical archives in Warsaw. Stalingrad in October of 1942. Soviet soldiers fighting in the ruins of the factory Red October. The original German inscription on the back of the photograph reads, Ukraine 1942, Jewish Action Operation, Ivangorod. Anti-tank gun crews of the Red Army prepare to fire against approaching German tank units on an unknown battlefield on October 13, 1942, during the German invasion of the Soviet Union. More info about this picture. In October of 1942, a German Junkers Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber attacks during the Battle of Stalingrad. Photo credit, AP Photo Deutsches Bundesarchiv. A German tank rolls up to its defeated enemy tank which burns near the edge of a patch of woods somewhere in Russia on October 20, 1942.